Hi, I'm James, creator and founder of Odie's Oil, and today I'm going to show you how to finish a floor with Odie's Oil. This is a live sawn, wide oak, wide plank floor made in our JT Studio wide plank flooring facility. We have two products here in my hands. We have the regular Odie's Oil and we have the Odie's Dark. They both do essentially the same thing as for protection, but the dark oil is my preference on white oak. It really brings out the color and the figure in the wood and really kind of gives that white oak a little bit of an antique look over a period of time. This finish here, the dark, in about 2-3 weeks, this floor will be much darker. The regular oil dries clear and you'll have a clear finish and you won't get that color change like you would get with the dark. In this case, we have 50 square feet right here, okay? You're gonna get about 25 square feet per ounce. So basically you'll need 2 ounces, okay? Always make sure you stir the contents of the jar. And it'll be very thick. The Odie's Dark is a little thinner than the Odie's Oil, but not much. But before I start, I want to talk a little bit about the materials I'm going to use. What I'm going to use to apply the oil is a red pad on a janitor's buffer. Best to use the lower speed on the buffer. This red pad has a grit rating of around 320. So no matter what your sanding is for a floor, this should be sufficient. Most people sand their floors about 120, 150 grit, and this red pad would be perfect for application. The first application, you're going to use a little bit more oil because you got to let your pad get loaded up. So I poured a fair amount on here, and I'm going to get some oil into the pad. I'm going to put the pad on the buffer. Put a fair amount of oil on the surface. And you're going to move about 1 inch per second. Now, as you can see, I got a lot of oil here. That's because I'm just getting started. But you don't want to use too much oil when you're using Odie's. That 25 square feet per ounce, you should need to take that seriously. You only need just enough oil to make the surface look wet. And you notice I've already changed the color of the wood and it looks like it's just wet. I'm not puddling the oil on, and I'm going to work this oil as far as I possibly can. Take your time. Don't move too fast. The longer you work the oil into the surface, the deeper it's going to go in, and the more successful your finish is going to be. As you can see, the Odie's Dark, it'll make this white oak look like an antique. And if you think you ran out of oil, you just check it yourself and you basically heal your polisher. It's what we call healing the polisher. You kind of dig down on one edge to push more oil out of the pad. The advantages of using Odie's is one coat, you're done. There's no need to come back 3 days in a row as if you were using a poly finish. A polyurethane finish, you got to do a base coat and then 2 coats of clear top coat. If you're a flooring installer, all you need is this one coat, 1 day. It may appear I'm moving slow, but the reality is you'll be able to finish much faster with Odie's Oil. Less time, less trips back to the job site, less labor. Get it all done in 1 day. So no need to be in a rush when you're applying it, because you're really saving time. I'm going to use just a little bit more. Just at the first application, you're going to use a lot more to saturate that coat, that pad. Notice no gloves, no mask. I even rub the finish into my hands. It'll soften my skin. That's how safe it is to use. So the Odie's Dark will give you what they call a fumed look. It looks like a fumed white oak. Wood floor finishers painstakingly try to get the fumed look on a floor. They fume the floors. They'll use chemicals to do it. With the Odie's Dark, you don't need any chemicals to get the fumed look. In the next 2 weeks, this floor will get richer and richer. So I say wait at least 45 minutes for the finish to set up, and then you start to buff it off. So if you got a large home, it's going to take you at least 45 minutes to put the finish on. At least one room might take you 20 minutes, and the next room may take you another 20, so you get 2 rooms done. And 45 minutes later, you can start buffing it off. Or you can take a lunch break, come back an hour later, and start again. No more rushing on your job site, no more worrying about the finish setting up too quickly. And then also, you can be on it the next day if your buff off is properly done. So now we're going to buff the finish off. And to buff the finish off, we're going to use a white pad. And the white pad is the same type of pad. It's a Scotch-Brite style pad, and it's got a 0 grit rating. And we took the middle section out, but use it, put it on the buffer the same way, and buff the finish off. Take your time. No reason to rush. I mean, I see a lot of videos with guys putting on finishes and they run across the floor with a buffer. Not a good idea. Take your time. Move about 1 inch per second. The white pads will last you at least 100 feet. And then you flip them over and you can do the other side. Heal your polisher to ensure you get the oil off. So a little spot there that was a little heavy. So now that you got all the finish off the surface, it's always best to go back in and buff it one more time, just to ensure you did it right. I can touch the floor now. This floor is essentially dry. I'm not making any handprints, no fingerprints, no nothing. When you can run your hands over the floor, just like I'm doing now, without leaving handprints or fingerprints, that means you got all the oil off the surface and you're good to go. But just to be safe, even when you do that, go back in, buff it one more time. In this case, I'm going to flip my pad. I'm going to pretend I did a big area. And I'm going to hit it one more time with a clean white pad. You can do this with a white pad, you can do it with a towel as well. The Odie's Dark does dry a little slower than the regular oil. It has a slower cure time, but it's really not going to be that noticeable if you buff it off properly. Once again, touch the floor, no handprints, no fingerprints. You could not do that with a polyurethane finish. You could not do that with my competitors' finishes. You would have to wait for them to cure to do that. Odie's, you're done. And this floor, you can walk on it tomorrow. You can walk on it today, actually. It won't hurt. But best to stay off it for a good day or really, I say 3 days for optimum sheen. Because once you start walking on it, someone might have sweaty feet or this or that and make the floor a little dull in those areas. But those things can always be fixed easily by applying a little bit more oil and wiping it off. But as a flooring professional, if you can keep your client off the floor for a couple of days, you're going to be okay. If they're in a big rush and they have to get on it the next morning, you'll be all right as long as you buff it off completely. This is going to actually be the second coat that's going on this floor. even though the Odie's finish that's on here now is all that is needed for ultimate durability and protection, we're still gonna put an oil wood butter coat on just to show you the application and how it's done, okay? An oil wood butter coat will give you more sheen than just an oil coat. And you can use the oil wood butter coat as your second coat as well. So Odie's dark butter goes a long, long way. You're gonna get about, close to 1,000 square feet out of a jar of dark butter on white oak. That far, crazy far. On the oil, you're gonna get about 25 square feet per ounce. That equates out to about 200 square feet per jar, or 250 square feet per jar if you're really, really cautious about how you're applying it. Calculate it out and figure how much oil and butter you're gonna use. So I'm gonna take a small amount, I'm gonna pull it out with my finger. The Odie's butter is thick, so like a wax. But once you start pushing it around, it loosens up like butter, like whipped butter. Okay, you put some heat on it and some friction on it, it's gonna loosen up. I'm gonna get a fair amount to start. And this is probably all we're gonna need to do this entire piece. Simple application, just like the regular Odie's oil. But what I did was I put about 50-50 butter oil mix on the surface. This is gonna give me a higher sheen. It's just like putting wax on your car in a lot of ways, where you put wax on your car, it gets shinier. You get more depth out of your paint. And the same thing with the butter oil coat, or just the butter coat. And you can come back to do this step. Usually I like to say wait at least a day before you put this next coat on after your first coat of oil. Just like with the regular oil and the Odie's dark, you want to heal your polisher. And healing your polisher means dig it in, push it in, get that red pad to get some pressure and some friction on the surface. Okay, that's it. This is done. And now after this application coat, I'm going to show you how to buff it off, which is really simple. We're going to use the white pad to buff it off, and we're going to get every last bit of the finish off the surface. Take your time, get every last bit of the oil and butter off the surface, and when you think you got it all off, go back and do it again with a clean pad. The buffing in takes off the excess oil off the surface, but also activates the molecules in the wood and in the oil, and actually enhancing and initiating that physical reaction and that cross-linking action. This piece is already dry. I can touch it. I'm not making handprints, no fingerprints, nothing. It's pretty much dry to touch. In about an hour, you'd be able to walk on it if you buff it off properly. I would tell your clients to stay off it for 72 hours if you can, because that is the initial beginning cure where I'm gonna feel very comfortable about anybody doing what they want on it. And then 2 weeks before you wash the floor, okay? 2 weeks before you leave standing water or anything on it. But if you really did it right and you got it all off like I just did, you can pretty much do anything you want to this floor pretty quickly. Thanks for joining us today, finishing this white oak floor. Stay tuned for more videos coming soon.